This is Classic Show here, going to bring you a new review, and we're going to be doing some old classics like Double Dragon, originally an arcade game, then ported onto the home consoles. Now, this one actually says the #1 arcade smash. So this is the original Double Dragon for NES. But we've also managed to dig up both Double Dragon 3 on Sega Genesis and Double Dragon 3 on the Game Boy. Now, I know you're saying, how are you going to review a Game Boy game on the Game Boy? Well, we have a Super Game Boy, which is actually a port where you can put your Game Boy games into a Super Nintendo to play them. So we're going to be reviewing this as well. John, Nathan, and Michael here, and we're going to give you... This is the opening screen for Double Dragon. If you'll notice, there isn't any music, but you do have 4 different modes of play.
And I know you'd think that the lack of music would be an issue, but don't worry, as soon as you get into the gameplay, you'll see how awesome the music for this game really is.
And also, just looking at the screen itself, the color variety is really good. You have red, black, white, greens of all shades, a kind of goldish color, and then you have the bright white for the different mode select. So we're just going to do Mode A, 1 player, which is the story mode with only 1 player. Mode B is actually a versus mode.
And I hadn't played this game in a while, but recently, just this weekend, I played it again, and I realized how amazing the music is.
Yeah, the music is awesome. Especially for a game like this, really, it is a masterpiece. Just look at the colors. I mean, even on your guy, the red hair, the darkish skin, the purple and blue clothes, I mean, the colors are really, really nice.
Yeah, and these sort of games tend to be my kind of favorite, because there's not a whole lot of stuff you have to do. You know, mystery and adventure games are great because you can just go, you have to figure stuff out, but sometimes it's nice just to go around beating people up.
There's always been, you know, controversy about violent video games, but this really does show you one of the first. You know, of course there was, people thought that early space shooters, just TV in-home game consoles were bad, but this is the part of the music I love. It sounds like a guitar solo.
It really is awesome. Now, I guess the only downside is this music does repeat. But, you know, if you're playing the game, it really would have to repeat. Because you could end up playing this level for however long, depending on how good you are at the game.
And this game does something that I love in video games, where you have the option to pick up the defeated enemy's weapon. Now, it's not as good as in Battletoads, where you beat people with severed body parts, but it's still great. Like, look, he just picks up the whip, and then he has the whip. So that's, I mean, that adds a little bit of realism, and it just makes the game, change and seem more exciting.
And also, when you're using the weapons, you can use the weapon itself, and you had an auxiliary attack.
And, you know, even if you don't like this game, you have to remember that it's the pioneer beat-em-up. Games like Ninja Turtles, and I mean the arcade version, wouldn't exist if it wasn't for this game.
Yeah.
And multiplayer modes on beat-em-ups are what everyone loves best. So, you know, games like, and these games are still released today. I mean, beat-em-up isn't a style that's died down. People still play these types of games.
This was an arcade game first. So this is just a home port, and if the home port is this good, the arcade version was really good.
Yeah, and it's nice to see a game that hasn't really changed much over time. Because, I mean, you know, like Tekken and stuff, it's basically still the same thing, just with different graphics.
Yeah, and that's how this is. I mean, if you look at, I have Double Dragon 5 on Genesis, and honestly, it's pretty much the same game, just with better graphics, which for most of the, you know, ignorant, whiny gamers, that's all they care about. So then that introduces them to a new game franchise and games like this, which are amazing.
And this is what happens when you lose a life. You just start out at the beginning of the screen.
And it just stops.
That's like, kind of weird.
Stops, everything stops. I thought you had paused
I
the
thought
game.
it froze for a second.
Yeah, but really, you know, if you get knocked out, you don't hear anything.
True. But you don't just pop up in the middle of the screen either.
And you don't disappear.
Is that Mike Tyson? Or are we really having a punch out?